What's going on YouTube? This is Rybo back at the bench, and today I've got another cut or carry knife review. This time looking at the Benchmade Tagged Out. It's like the 15535 or 153553543 something, but this is the Tagged Out. And this is a really cool and interesting knife, and one that I've been excited to check out. So this knife is kind of marketed more towards, I guess, hunters and outdoorsmen. The idea behind this, I think, is that it's much like the Bug Out in that it is incredibly lightweight. I think it comes in right over 2 ounces, thanks to these very thin plastic scales. But it still gives you a lot of blade here. You have this nice clip point, really large blade. And so the idea is kind of a super lightweight but very practical knife for the hunter or outdoorsman. So let me go ahead and bring in size comparison. Obviously the Bug Out is going to be a pretty good comparison. This is these are aftermarket scales, so you lose a little bit of that similarity, but very similar in the hands, very similar feel and overall balance to both of these knives. But the big difference is that this is much larger, obviously. So this really practically is a lot closer to something like the PM2. PM2 obviously a lot bulkier, a lot bigger, or a little bit bigger. But in terms of sharpened blade length, I think the Tagged Out probably is actually a little bit larger. And so I just brought a few others. So like the Manix 2 lightweight, somewhat of a good comparison. And then even something, this is just kind of massive, but like the Code 4 in terms of that kind of clip point and overall blade profile. All right, so there you go with size comparison. Now let's get into things that I like and dislike about the Tagged Out. So the first thing that I like about the Tagged Out is the size. It is a bigger knife, but it's super lightweight. To me, feels pretty good to really good in the hands. I mean, it definitely feels like a super thin plasticky knife. It's not the best feeling. I get a little bit of hot spot with that clip. But overall, I think feels pretty good in the hands, especially for something that is so lightweight. Little bit airy back here. And the knife is not as comfortable in the hand as I would have expected. This kind of cramps me a little bit on where I'd like to be. But overall, very comfortable knife in the hand. And when you're at 2 ounces or so with that kind of blade length, no real complaints to me. The one thing I do like is where that blade is when I hold it. I like that clip point. I like that angle, and so I've found it to be very practical for just kind of regular tasks. Other things that I like, so the axis lock is nice as usual. I have my concerns in general about longevity with the lock, but I've said that before. But the action is pretty good, and it's got that very familiar, smooth axis lockup. Jimping I find to be fine, nothing spectacular, but fine. But to me, the blade is really where it shines through. So this is, I believe, CPM 154, which is a fine steel. No issues with that at all. Holds a nice edge. But it's just a really nice blade. You are getting a huge blade on this knife, and that's really where all the weight comes in. And I find it to be a very practical blade. Very thin. You've got that swedge, I guess, up there, and just a nice flat blade. One that I find to be a very good slicer, but I haven't had any issues, and in fact, it in some ways reminds me of my Sebenza blade, just for regular tasks. Definitely going to be something, if I were to carry, maybe not an every single day carry, but definitely a blade that I think can both do kind of your typical everyday tasks, but I can also see some of the hunting and kind of outdoorsy applications as well with this. Although the axis lock, not that I can speak from experience, but that it would bother me a little bit to take it too far. But I'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing that I really like about this knife, I like, and this is maybe just aesthetically, but I like what they've kind of done with the handle here. I just like the general look of it, the cutaways that they've done. I find it to look really nice. I think it feels pretty good in the hand. Good kind of mixture of some aggressive, not super aggressive, but some texturing there, just to kind of make sure you don't lose your grip, but not too much. And I like this clip. This is their deep carry fold over, kind of the short version. I'm trying to remember, yeah, same one I've got on this. I like it. I think it carries pretty well for such a large knife. You can see it's slightly canted. And so to me, it's performed just fine. As far as deep carry clips go, this one to me is one that does not snag as much as some of my other clips. Like for example, this one on a lot of the Spydercos, this one tends to snag quite a bit for me. But this one I've had really good success with. I find that paired with these kind of plasticky handles lets me get it in and out of the pocket pretty easily, but it also doesn't tend to move around. So it's kind of that sweet spot in my experience. So I really like that. Overall, I really like it. I think it's a nice knife. I was kind of impressed with it right out of the box. Things that I don't like, there are a few. So one of the major differences between a lot of the Benchmades, particularly with the Axis lock, is that it does not have a thumb stud. It's got this cutaway in the vein of maybe a Spyderco, but it has the cutaway. And so, with your Benchmades, typically you're gonna either kind of operate them with the Axis lock, by itself, because that's kind of fun to do, or you're gonna slow roll it or flick it open. I can say that after using this for a little while, I much prefer a thumb stud, and I wish this had a thumb stud, because otherwise, because if it did, this would be a knockout winner. There's nothing wrong with this cutout. It opens fine, and I'm a slow roller, so I do that. I don't think you're gonna really flick this knife open. You can probably do it with the Axis lock, and I'm on camera, so it's kind of difficult to do it. But in general, I don't find it as easy to use as a Spyderco thumb hole, and I don't find it as easy or enjoyable as a thumb stud, and I think a thumb stud would have done wonders on this knife. I can see if you had on gloves or something like that being pretty easy and maybe even easier than a thumb stud. But to me, everyday use, I find myself much preferring that it did have a thumb stud. So that I am not super happy with, but it's also something a little bit different, which is kind of refreshing. And really the only other thing that I dislike about this knife is something that, just moved the little camera stand. The only other thing that I really dislike about this knife is not so much about this knife, but it's kind of the combination of what this knife is all about and the type of lock. And it's not something I can even speak to from experience. And this is something that people kind of light me up about in the comments, but this is just kind of a concern or a fear that I would have. So this knife is definitely targeted towards more hard use. It is marketed again towards like outdoor stuff. And I can totally see why. I think it'd be a great outdoor knife. I like the orange color for that. Overall, I love the kind of, I say this all the time, but like the ethos of the knife. It's just a neat knife, and it's a cool marketing thing. My only concern is that this kind of lock may not be well suited towards super hard use for two reasons. One, it's an exposed lock, and so you have a lot in there with the spring and that opening and all of that that can get kind of messed up. You can get dirt and grime in there, and I would just worry over time about stuff getting in there. So that's one minor-ish concern, because to tear that down and clean it out is it's a chore. And then the other thing is, Benchmades with the Axis lock are kind of notorious for difficulty getting no blade play and getting a nice smooth lock and deployment. I would just guess that with some hard use, that's going to open up a little bit, and that might be, there might be a little bit of blade play there, or might be some difficulty. And so I like the axis lock. I find it to be very, very smooth and enjoyable, and generally I enjoy carrying it. However, I think if this were a knife that was going to be kind of a hard use outdoor hunting, camping, fishing knife, that's one concern that I would have. Now, realistically, you're probably not going to use it for that. Let's just be honest. Realistically, that's kind of the idea of the knife and the marketing campaign, and you're probably just going to use it to open boxes and packages and stuff like that in day to day, kind of like I do. And if that's the case, this is a great knife, and I really like it. Cut or carry for me, this would be a carry. I really enjoyed this knife. I find it to be kind of a refreshing re-bug out take. Like it's a lot of the same things I love about the bug out. Super lightweight, but I'm not sacrificing anything with the blade here. But is it something I'm really gonna take on like super outdoor stuff? Probably not. But that's okay. I think it's still a very, very good knife, and one that I wouldn't hesitate to carry on a regular basis. Interested to hear your take, though. I probably should say this more often, but I'm really bad at like the YouTube growth and that kind of thing. But feel free to like, follow, subscribe, comment, do all those things if you would like to. I would be interested to hear your thoughts on this knife if you've carried it, but I really enjoyed it. So until next time, enjoy.